by the tangled growth of mesquites and sagebrush. It was there he'd played countless childhood games, and later it became his full-time hiding place. By day he wouldn't venture outside. Only when nightfall arrived would he fish the river for perch and carp and set traps for the rabbits and squirrels he would cook on a small fire in the deepest corner of his hideaway. He bathed in the river by moonlight. He was alone with nothing but his thoughts and the constant concern he would be found, recording the passage of each day with a mark on the wall of the cave. Ira Dalton became a prisoner of his own fear. Small wonder he didn't go crazy as an outhouse rat. I don't intend that observation in a mean-spirited way. You understand? As I've said, I liked him from the first day I met him in a livery stable in Phantom Hill, where he was cleaning stalls and tending horses in exchange for room and board. He left his hiding place and gone there as soon as his grandpa alerted him that the Confederates had surrendered and the war was over. The only thing he owned was a mule named Bell that he'd left home on. His dog, whose name I can't recall, followed along. By then he was 20, going on 21, tall and skinny as a rail. The thing that struck me the first time I met him was that he had the saddest eyes I had ever seen. I'll tell you more about him later, but for now, what I want you to know before you go reading any further is this. Ira Dalton was no coward, not by a long shot. If not for him, I'd not be around to tell this story. He saved my life. Part 1. Chapter 1. Coy Jennings was limping almost as badly as his horse when, in the distance, he saw chimney smoke lazily climbing into the clear morning sky. From a small rise he could see a couple of clapboard buildings, a few small houses, and a lengthy row of tents. The wind carried the sounds of people as they hurried about, dogs barking, a rooster crowing, and the steady clanging of a blacksmith's hammer. Phantom Hill didn't look like much of a town. "I reckon if we don't fall flat on our faces," he said to the hobbling bay, "we're going to make it." The trip took far longer than Jennings had planned. What he had figured would be a 2-day ride turned into more than a week after his horse had startled a rattlesnake, which then had bitten him just above the hoof on his back leg. Coy hadn't even bothered to kill the snake, instead dismounting immediately and cutting away a length of rein to tie above the small marks left by the rattler's fangs. He'd quickly tethered his mount to a mesquite tree, taken out his knife, and begun cutting small X's above the wound. Kneeling in front of the animal, he'd sucked the bloody poison from the leg. Once that was done, he'd made a small fire and boiled water to bathe the cuts. He then made a mushy plaster of tobacco and placed it on the leg, wrapping it tightly with a strip of cloth ripped from his shirt. But it still swelled and soon became feverish. Through the remainder of the day and into the night, Jennings had tended the bay, a gentle animal that his pa had given him when he was still in his teens. He'd ridden him to the schoolhouse and town dances, then during his days as a Confederate soldier. He was the only horse Jennings had ever owned, and he refused to consider the idea that it might become his responsibility to put the animal down and relieve him of his misery. The only time he'd left the horse's side was to walk to a nearby spring for water and to whisper a prayer. "Lord, you know I'm not one for asking favors. Likely as not I'm not deserving of any. Last time I recall reaching out to you was when that Union soldier shot me in the leg and you saw to it I didn't die. What I'm asking this time is if you could see a way clear to do the same for my horse. Rodeo's his name, and he's lived a good and honorable life. More than me, that's for sure. I thank you kindly for anything you can do to help him get better." On the third morning he awoke, long before sunup, to find Rodeo standing, chewing on mesquite beans. Though he wasn't putting weight on the affected leg, the swelling had gone down. The horse's eyes were clear as he looked down at his owner. "Appears you're feeling better," Coy said, climbing to his feet to stroke Rodeo's flank. He filled his hat with water from his canteen and held it for the horse to drink. "Let's rest for another day or so, then see if you can walk the rest of the way. Maybe we'll find someone who can provide you proper doctoring."